Imagine a world where nothing disturbs your peace. No matter how chaotic life becomes, you remain grounded, calm, and undisturbed. This state of serenity is not a fantasy. It is achievable through the profound teachings of Buddhism. As the Buddha once said, "You will not be punished for your anger, you will be punished by your anger." This wisdom suggests that our emotional state often creates more harm than external circumstances. The key is to learn how to maintain inner tranquility despite life's inevitable challenges. This video will explore how to act as if nothing bothers you, delving into the timeless wisdom of Buddhism. We will journey through 7 powerful principles that can transform your life, helping you find peace, clarity, and resilience in the face of adversity. Chapter 1. Listen twice as much as you speak. In our fast-paced modern world, where communication is at the forefront of everything we do, the act of listening has become somewhat of a lost art. We are often so preoccupied with making our point, asserting our opinions, and ensuring we are heard, that we forget the transformative power of deep, mindful listening. Buddhism, with its centuries of wisdom, reminds us of the importance of listening more than we speak. This lesson is not just about staying silent, but about engaging in a way that fosters understanding, empathy, and connection. To listen twice as much as we speak is to embrace a way of life that seeks to understand before reacting. In a conversation, especially one fraught with tension or conflict, the instinctual response is to defend, to retaliate, or to counter with an argument. But what if instead we paused, took a breath, and simply listened? This simple act can diffuse tension, create space for understanding, and transform a potentially combative interaction into a moment of human connection. The Buddha himself once said, "To understand everything is to forgive everything." These words hold profound meaning, pointing to the deep connection between understanding and compassion. When we take the time to truly listen, we allow ourselves to step into the other person's experience. We begin to see the world through their eyes, feel what they feel, and understand why they think the way they do. This is not an easy task. It requires patience, openness, and a willingness to let go of our preconceived notions. But in doing so, we cultivate a sense of empathy that transcends mere words. We begin to connect on a human level, not just intellectually, but emotionally and spiritually. There is a story that beautifully illustrates this concept. In a small village, there was a wise old man who was known for his ability to resolve conflicts. People from all over would come to him seeking advice and guidance. One day, 2 villagers came to him with a dispute. Both were adamant that they were right and the other was wrong. The wise man listened intently to each side, not interrupting or offering his opinion. After both had spoken, he simply nodded and asked them to reflect on what they had heard from each other. In that moment of reflection, both villagers began to see the other's perspective. The conflict, which had seemed insurmountable, was resolved not by the wise man's words, but by his ability to listen and create a space for understanding. Listening, however, is not just about words. It extends to the world around us. The sounds of nature, the silence that fills a quiet room, the emotions conveyed without speech. It is about tuning into the subtleties of life, the unspoken cues that carry as much meaning as the loudest voice. By listening to the world, we begin to understand its rhythms and flows. We become more attuned to the nuances of human emotion, to the beauty of a quiet moment, to the wisdom that can be found in stillness. The practice of listening twice as much as we speak is not about diminishing our voice or our presence. On the contrary, it enhances the quality of our interactions. When we do speak, our words carry more weight, more meaning. They are not just reactions, but thoughtful, considered responses that come from a place of understanding. This way of engaging with the world creates deeper connections, fosters respect, and builds trust. In the broader scope of life, listening is a tool for growth. It allows us to learn from others, to gain new perspectives, and to expand our worldview. It challenges us to step outside of ourselves and consider the experiences and wisdom of those around us. Through this, we not only enrich our own understanding, but also contribute to the collective wisdom of the community. Listening, then, is not just a personal practice, but a societal one. It is a way of being that promotes peace, harmony, and mutual respect. So as we move through life, let us remember the power of listening. Let us embrace the practice of listening more than we speak, not just in conversations but in every aspect of our lives. By doing so, we open ourselves to a deeper understanding of the world and the people in it, and we create a foundation of compassion, empathy, and wisdom. Chapter 2. Don't allow the comments and attitudes of others. Control your life. Life is a journey, one that is uniquely our own. Yet as we walk along our path, we often encounter the voices of others, family, friends, colleagues, even strangers, offering their opinions, judgments, and advice. While these comments may come from a place of care or concern, they can also become burdensome, leading us to doubt our decisions or alter our course to meet the expectations of others. Buddhism teaches us to remain steadfast on our path, to not allow the attitudes and comments of others to control our lives. Imagine walking through a forest, surrounded by the natural beauty of towering trees and winding trails. As you walk, you encounter signs along the way, each pointing in different directions. Some signs tell you to go left, others insist that right is the correct path, while still others advise you to turn back. If you were to follow every sign, you would quickly become lost, confused by the conflicting messages. Instead, you must trust your own sense of direction, relying on your inner compass to guide you. This is the essence of living a life that is true to yourself, free from the influence of others' opinions. The Buddha once said, "Do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment." This teaching reminds us that our focus should be on the here and now, not on the opinions of others or the hypothetical what-ifs of life. When we live in the present, we are able to make decisions based on our own values, desires, and intuition. We are not swayed by the fear of judgment or the need for approval. There is a story of a young man who sought to become a musician. His family, however, had different plans for him. They believed that a career in music was unstable and impractical, urging him to pursue a more respectable profession. For years, the young man struggled with this internal conflict, torn between his passion and the expectations of those around him. Eventually, he made the courageous decision to follow his heart, dedicating himself to his music despite the disapproval of his family. Over time, he found success and fulfillment, not because he achieved fame or fortune, but because he remained true to himself. This story illustrates the importance of living authentically. When we allow the comments and attitudes of others to dictate our choices, we lose touch with our own desires and values. We begin to live a life that is not our own, one that is shaped by the expectations of others rather than by our own inner guidance. This can lead to feelings of dissatisfaction, frustration, and even resentment. Living authentically requires courage. It means standing firm in your convictions, even when others doubt you. It means trusting yourself, even when the path ahead is uncertain. It means accepting that not everyone will understand or support your choices, and that's okay. Your journey is yours to navigate, and only you can decide the direction in which you will go. In a world that is constantly offering advice and opinions, it is easy to become overwhelmed by the noise. Social media, in particular, amplifies this, as we are bombarded with images and messages telling us how we should live, what we should aspire to, and what defines success. But the truth is, there is no one-size-fits-all definition of success or happiness. Each of us must define it for ourselves based on our own values, dreams, and experiences. The Buddha's teaching to concentrate the mind on the present moment is a powerful reminder to stay grounded in our own reality. When we focus on the present, we free ourselves from the weight of others' opinions. We learn to listen to our own inner voice, to trust our instincts, and to make choices that align with our true selves. This does not mean that we should ignore the advice of others entirely. There is wisdom to be gained from the experiences and perspectives of those around us. But ultimately, the decisions we make must come from a place of authenticity and self-awareness. By living authentically, we cultivate a sense of inner peace. We are no longer pulled in different directions by the conflicting opinions of others. Instead, we walk our path with confidence, knowing that we are living a life that is true to who we are. This in turn leads to a deeper sense of fulfillment and purpose, as we are no longer seeking validation from the outside world, but are content in knowing that we are following our own path. Chapter 3. Be ready to accept the worst. Life is unpredictable, filled with moments of joy and sorrow, success and failure, calm and chaos. While we may hope for the best, Buddhism teaches us to be prepared for the worst. This does not mean living in a constant state of fear or anxiety, but rather cultivating a mindset of acceptance. The Buddha once said, "Pain is certain, suffering is optional." These words hold a profound truth. While we cannot escape the challenges and difficulties of life, we can choose how we respond to them. To be ready to accept the worst is to acknowledge that life is full of uncertainties. It is to understand that setbacks, losses, and disappointments are an inevitable part of the human experience. Rather than resisting these moments or allowing them to consume us, we can choose to embrace them as opportunities for growth and transformation. When we accept the reality that challenges are a part of life, we free ourselves from the emotional burden of constantly fighting against them. Acceptance does not mean passivity or resignation. On the contrary, it is a powerful act of courage. It allows us to face difficulties head-on with grace and resilience, rather than being overwhelmed by them. Consider the story of an elderly woman named Lee, who had lived through war, famine, and personal loss. Throughout her life, she had faced numerous hardships, each one seemingly more difficult than the last. Yet when asked how she managed to maintain her calm and positive outlook, she simply smiled and said, "I have learned to accept what life gives me, the good, the bad. It is all part of the same journey." Lee's strength came not from avoiding pain, but from accepting it as a natural part of life's ebb and flow. This mindset allowed her to find peace even in the most difficult circumstances. Acceptance is not about giving up or becoming complacent. It is about acknowledging the reality of a situation and deciding how we will move forward. When we resist what is happening, we create unnecessary suffering for ourselves. We get caught up in thoughts like, "This shouldn't be happening," or "Why me?" These thoughts only serve to intensify our pain, trapping us in a cycle of frustration and despair. But when we accept what is, we open ourselves to the possibility of healing and growth. Imagine life as a river, constantly flowing and changing. Sometimes the water is calm and peaceful, and other times it is rough and tumultuous. If we try to fight against the current, we exhaust ourselves, struggling to stay afloat. But if we learn to go with the flow, we conserve our energy and navigate the river with greater ease. In the same way, acceptance allows us to move through life's challenges without being consumed by them. It gives us the strength to keep going, even when the path ahead is uncertain. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises from our attachment to how we think things should be. We suffer when we cling to the idea that life should always be easy, or that we should never experience pain or loss. But the truth is, life is unpredictable. It is full of highs and lows, and we cannot control everything that happens to us. What we can control, however, is how we respond to these events. By accepting the reality of life's challenges, we free ourselves from the suffering that comes from resistance. To be ready to accept the worst means cultivating a mindset of resilience. It means preparing ourselves mentally and emotionally for the inevitable ups and downs of life. This does not mean living in constant fear of what might go wrong. Instead, it means recognizing that difficulties are a natural part of the human experience and trusting that we have the strength to overcome them. In practical terms, being ready to accept the worst might involve developing coping strategies that help us stay grounded during times of stress. For some, this might mean practicing mindfulness or meditation to calm the mind and gain perspective. For others, it might involve building a strong support network of friends and family who can offer guidance and comfort during difficult times. Whatever the method, the goal is the same: to cultivate inner strength and resilience so that we are prepared to face life's challenges with courage and grace. There is great wisdom in the Buddhist teaching that suffering is optional. While we cannot avoid pain, we can choose how we respond to it. By accepting life's challenges, we free ourselves from the emotional turmoil that comes from resisting reality. We find peace in the midst of chaos, and we discover our own inner strength. This is the power of acceptance. Chapter 4. Don't be afraid of failing. In our pursuit of success and happiness, the fear of failure often looms large. We are conditioned to see failure as something to be avoided at all costs, a sign of weakness or inadequacy. But Buddhism offers a different perspective. Rather than fearing failure, we are encouraged to embrace it as an essential part of growth and self-improvement. The Buddha's teaching, each morning we are born again. What we do today is what matters most, serves as a reminder that every day is a new opportunity to learn from our mistakes and start fresh. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is a necessary step on the path to achieving it. Imagine a child learning to walk. Every fall, every stumble is a crucial part of the process. The child does not give up after falling a few times. Instead, they keep trying, learning from each attempt until they finally master the skill of walking. In the same way, failure is a stepping stone to success. Each mistake we make is an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to become more resilient. Consider the story of Thomas Edison, the inventor of the light bulb. It is said that Edison made over 1,000 unsuccessful attempts before finally creating a working light bulb. When asked about his failures, Edison famously replied, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." His persistence and refusal to view his mistakes as failures allowed him to achieve one of the most significant inventions in history. This mindset is at the heart of Buddhist teachings on failure. Rather than viewing mistakes as something to be ashamed of, we are encouraged to see them as valuable learning experiences. Each time we fail, we gain new insights and understanding that bring us closer to our goals. In this way, failure becomes a teacher, guiding us toward greater wisdom and self-awareness. The fear of failure often stems from our attachment to perfectionism. We set unrealistic expectations for ourselves, believing that we must always succeed, always excel, and never make mistakes. But this mindset only sets us up for disappointment. The truth is, no one is perfect. We are all human, and to be human is to make mistakes. The key is not to avoid failure, but to embrace it as a natural part of life's journey. Buddhism teaches us to approach failure with compassion for ourselves and for others. When we fail, it is easy to fall into a pattern of self-criticism and negative thinking. We tell ourselves that we are not good enough, that we should have done better, that we are incapable of success. But these thoughts only serve to reinforce our fear of failure and keep us stuck in a cycle of self-doubt. Instead, we can choose to respond to failure with kindness and understanding. Just as we would offer encouragement to a friend who is struggling, we can extend the same compassion to ourselves. We can remind ourselves that failure is not a reflection of our worth, but a natural part of the learning process. By treating ourselves with kindness, we create a space for growth and self-improvement. One way to reframe our perspective on a failure is to see it as feedback rather than as a judgment of our abilities. Every time we fail, we receive valuable information about what works and what doesn't. This feedback helps us refine our approach, make adjustments, and ultimately achieve better results. In this way, failure becomes a tool for learning and progress, rather than a source of shame or embarrassment. The fear of failure often prevents us from taking risks or trying new things. We stay within our comfort zones, afraid of the unknown and the possibility of making mistakes. But growth and success require us to step outside of our comfort zones and embrace the uncertainty that comes with trying something new. When we let go of our fear of failure, we open ourselves to new opportunities for growth, creativity, and discovery. There is a story in Buddhism about a young monk who was given the task of tending to the monastery's garden. The garden had been neglected for some time, and the young monk was eager to restore it to its former beauty. However, despite his best efforts, the garden did not thrive. The plants withered and the flowers failed to bloom. Frustrated, the monk went to his teacher and confessed his failure. The teacher smiled and said, "The garden is not a failure. It is a lesson. What did you learn from it?" The monk reflected on his experience and realized that he had been too focused on the outcome, on making the garden look perfect, rather than on the process of caring for it. He had not been attentive to the needs of the plants or the natural rhythms of the garden. With this newfound understanding, the monk returned to the garden with a different approach. He began to listen to the needs of the plants, to work with the soil and the seasons, and over time, the garden began to flourish. This story teaches us that failure is not the end of the journey, but a necessary part of it. Each failure provides us with an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to improve. When we approach failure with an open mind and a willingness to learn, we transform it from something to be feared into something to be embraced. Chapter 5. Keep it simple. In a world that often values complexity and busyness, Buddhism offers a refreshing perspective on the importance of simplicity. The Buddha's teaching, "The way is not in the sky, the way is in the heart," reminds us that true peace and fulfillment are found not in the external world, but within ourselves. To keep life simple is to focus on what truly matters, stripping away the distractions and unnecessary complexities that cloud our vision and burden our hearts. Simplicity is not about living with less or giving up our ambitions. It is about clarity, about discerning what is essential and letting go of what is not. When we live simply, we create space for the things that truly nourish our souls, whether that be meaningful relationships, personal growth, or inner peace. We free ourselves from the constant striving for more, the endless pursuit of material possessions, status, or success. Instead, we find contentment in the present moment, in the beauty of life's simple pleasures. Imagine a room filled with clutter, old books, clothes, and knickknacks that you no longer need or use. The room feels cramped, and it's difficult to move around or find what you're looking for. But when you take the time to declutter, to remove the things that no longer serve a purpose, the room transforms. It becomes open, spacious, and inviting. You can breathe easier, think more clearly, and focus on the things that truly matter. Our lives are much the same. We often fill our days with tasks, obligations, and distractions that leave us feeling overwhelmed and disconnected from ourselves. We chase after success, thinking that it will bring us happiness, only to find that the more we accumulate, the more stressed and dissatisfied we become. But when we simplify our lives, we create space for what truly matters. We find joy in the present moment, in the small, everyday experiences that bring us peace and fulfillment. Simplicity also applies to our mental and emotional lives. Just as we can declutter our physical spaces, we can also declutter our minds. This means letting go of the thoughts and worries that weigh us down, the fears, anxieties, and expectations that keep us from living fully in the present. It means learning to focus on the here and now, rather than getting caught up in the past or the future. There is a story about a monk who lived a simple life in a small hut on the mountainside. He had few possessions, just a bed, a table, and a few basic necessities. Every day he would wake up with the sunrise, meditate, tend to his garden, and enjoy the peacefulness of the mountain. One day a traveler visited the monk and asked him, "How can you live with so little? Don't you get bored or lonely?" The monk smiled and replied, "When you have everything you need within your heart, you do not need much else." This story illustrates the beauty of simplicity. The monk found contentment not in material possessions, but in the peace and joy of living in harmony with nature and himself. His life was not filled with distractions or unnecessary complexity, but with the things that truly mattered to him: his spiritual practice, his connection to the earth, and his inner peace. Simplicity is a powerful tool for finding clarity and purpose in life. When we strip away the excess, we are left with what is essential. We are able to see more clearly, to focus on what truly matters, and to live with greater intention. Simplicity brings us closer to our true selves, helping us to align our actions with our values and our desires. In a world that often encourages us to do more, have more, and be more, simplicity offers a counterbalance. It reminds us that happiness is not found in the accumulation of things or in the busyness of life, but in the quiet moments of reflection, in the connections we make with others, and in the peace we find within ourselves. By embracing simplicity, we free ourselves from the constant pressure to achieve and succeed, and instead we find contentment in the present moment. Chapter 6. Practice humility. Humility as a concept often evokes a sense of modesty, sometimes misinterpreted as weakness or submissiveness. However, in Buddhism, humility is seen as one of the greatest strengths a person can possess. It is a state of being where one recognizes their place in the vastness of the universe, aware of their imperfections and limitations, yet content in the knowledge that wisdom is found not in grand declarations, but in quiet understanding. The Buddha once imparted the wisdom, "A man is not called wise because he talks and talks again, but if he is peaceful, loving, and fearless, then he is in truth called wise." These words encapsulate the essence of humility, not the need to prove one's knowledge, but the ability to embody peace, love, and courage in one's actions and relationships. When we practice humility, we free ourselves from the shackles of ego. The ego constantly demands validation, recognition, and praise. It thrives on comparison, always measuring ourselves against others, seeking to assert superiority. But in the teachings of Buddhism, true wisdom comes not from standing above others, but from realizing that we are all interconnected, all part of the same human experience. Humility allows us to dissolve the barriers that ego builds, barriers of pride, arrogance, and judgment, and instead fosters a sense of compassion, understanding, and connection. Consider the story of a renowned Buddhist master who was invited to a large gathering of scholars. The attendees were eager to hear his thoughts, expecting him to deliver a profound speech on the intricacies of Buddhist philosophy. However, when the master took the stage, he simply bowed and sat in silence. Minutes passed and the crowd grew restless. Finally, one of the scholars stood up and asked, "Why do you not speak?" "We have come here to learn from you." The master smiled gently and replied, "True wisdom does not need to be spoken. It is found in the stillness of the heart." With that, he stood and left, leaving the crowd in a state of deep reflection. This story highlights the power of humility. The master did not feel the need to impress others with his knowledge or assert his authority through words. Instead, he allowed the silence and the moment to speak for itself, trusting that those who were ready to learn would find the wisdom within themselves. Humility is not about downplaying our abilities or achievements. It is about recognizing that true wisdom is not something to be flaunted or used for self-promotion. It is a quiet, inner strength that radiates through our actions, through the way we treat others, and through the way we approach life. In our modern world, where success is often measured by outward achievements, wealth, status, recognition, it can be easy to fall into the trap of seeking validation from external sources. We are constantly bombarded with messages that tell us to be the best, to rise above the competition, to assert our dominance. But Buddhism teaches us that real success is found not in how we are perceived by others, but in how we live our lives with integrity, kindness, and humility. A humble person does not seek the spotlight, but quietly goes about their work, making a difference in the lives of those around them without seeking praise or acknowledgement. Humility also plays a crucial role in our personal relationships. When we approach others with humility, we create space for genuine connection. We are not focused on proving ourselves right or asserting our superiority. Instead, we listen, we empathize, and we seek to understand. This creates an environment of mutual respect and trust, where both parties feel valued and heard. In contrast, when we let ego dictate our interactions, we become defensive, argumentative, and disconnected from the other person's experience. Humility allows us to let go of the need to be right and instead focus on building meaningful, compassionate relationships. There is a powerful story about a young monk who once approached his teacher, filled with pride after successfully completing a challenging meditation practice. "I have mastered the practice," the young monk declared. "I am ready to teach others." The teacher, sensing the pride in the monk's words, took him to a small stream outside the monastery. He handed the monk a bucket and said, "Go to the stream and fill this bucket with water, but be careful. Do not spill a single drop." The monk, confident in his abilities, eagerly took the bucket and began to fill it with water. However, as he carried it back, he noticed that the more he focused on keeping the water steady, the more drops began to spill over the edge. Frustrated, the monk returned to the teacher with the half-empty bucket. The teacher smiled and said, "The water is like your knowledge. The more you try to hold on to it, the more you lose. True wisdom flows freely, like the stream. It cannot be contained or controlled. Only when you let go of your pride will you be ready to teach others." This story serves as a reminder that humility is essential to personal growth. When we are filled with pride or ego, we limit our ability to learn and grow. We become attached to our knowledge, believing that we have already reached the pinnacle of understanding. But true wisdom requires us to remain open, to acknowledge that there is always more to learn, more to understand. Humility allows us to approach life with a beginner's mind, always ready to learn, always open to new experiences and insights. Humility is not about diminishing our light or pretending to be less than we are. It is about recognizing that our light shines brightest when we use it to illuminate the path for others, not just ourselves. When we practice humility, we inspire those around us not by our words or achievements, but by the way we live our lives with kindness, compassion, and a deep sense of interconnectedness with all beings. In this way, humility becomes a source of strength, not weakness. It allows us to navigate life with grace, to learn from our mistakes, and to grow into the best versions of ourselves. Chapter 7. Be aware of the dangers of fortune. In our modern society, material wealth is often equated with success and happiness. We are taught from a young age to strive for financial security, to accumulate possessions, and to measure our worth by the things we own. But Buddhism offers a different perspective, one that challenges the notion that fortune and material wealth can bring lasting happiness. The Buddha's teaching, health is the greatest gift, contentment the greatest wealth, faithfulness the best relationship, serves as a reminder that true wealth is found not in material possessions, but in our health, our sense of contentment, and the relationships we cultivate. One of the dangers of fortune is that it can easily become an obsession. The pursuit of wealth can consume our thoughts, our time, and our energy, leaving little room for anything else. We may find ourselves constantly striving for more, never satisfied with what we have, always chasing the next big thing. This endless pursuit can lead to a sense of emptiness, as no matter how much we accumulate, it never seems to be enough. The more we focus on acquiring wealth, the more disconnected we become from the things that truly matter: our health, our happiness, and our relationships. There is a story of a wealthy businessman who spent his entire life building his empire. He worked tirelessly, sacrificing time with his family, his health, and his personal happiness in order to achieve financial success. As he grew older, he began to realize that despite all his wealth, he felt unfulfilled. His relationships had deteriorated, his health was in decline, and he found little joy in the things he once valued. In his final years, he regretted the choices he had made, wishing he had spent more time with his loved ones and less time chasing material wealth. This story serves as a cautionary tale, reminding us that fortune cannot bring true happiness or fulfillment. Buddhism teaches that contentment is the greatest wealth. Contentment is the ability to find peace and satisfaction in the present moment, regardless of our external circumstances. It is a state of mind that is not dependent on material possessions or external achievements, but is rooted in a deep sense of gratitude for what we have. When we are content, we no longer feel the need to constantly strive for more. We are able to appreciate the simple pleasures of life: a warm meal, a walk in nature, a kind word from a friend. These moments of contentment are where true happiness is found. Another danger of fortune is that it can create a false sense of security. We may come to believe that our wealth will protect us from life's challenges, that it will shield us from pain, suffering, or loss. But the reality is that no amount of money or material possessions can prevent the inevitable ups and downs of life. Health can decline, relationships can falter, and unforeseen events can turn our lives upside down. When we place our sense of security in external things, we set ourselves up for disappointment. The only true security comes from within, from our ability to navigate life's challenges with grace and resilience. The Buddha also warned of the dangers of attachment to material possessions. When we become attached to our wealth, we become fearful of losing it. This fear can lead to anxiety, stress, and a sense of constant vigilance as we try to protect what we have accumulated. But attachment only leads to suffering. The more we cling to our possessions, the more we suffer when they are taken away or lost. Buddhism teaches us to practice non-attachment, to let go of our need to control or hold on to things, and to trust in the impermanence of all things. There is a story in Buddhism about a man who was deeply attached to his wealth. He lived in constant fear of losing his fortune, obsessively guarding his possessions, and worrying about thieves, disasters, or bad investments. One day, a fire broke out in his home, destroying everything he owned. Devastated, the man fell into despair, unable to cope with the loss of his wealth. A wise monk, hearing of the man's plight, came to visit him. The monk said, "You have lost only your possessions, not your soul. Your wealth was never truly yours to keep. It was always impermanent, like the changing seasons. But your soul, your spirit, that is what remains. Find peace in that, and you will discover a wealth that cannot be taken from you. This story reminds us that material wealth is fleeting. It can be lost in an instant, through no fault of our own. But our inner wealth, our sense of peace, contentment, and faithfulness can never be taken from us. It is this inner wealth that we must cultivate, for it is the source of true happiness and fulfillment. Faithfulness, as the Buddha taught, is the best relationship. Faithfulness is not just about loyalty to others, but also about being faithful to ourselves, to our values, and to the things that truly matter. When we are faithful to our principles, we live with integrity. We do not compromise our values for the sake of wealth or success. Instead, we stay true to ourselves, even when it is difficult, even when it means making sacrifices. This faithfulness brings a sense of inner peace and satisfaction that cannot be found in material wealth. In conclusion, the dangers of fortune lie not in the wealth itself, but in our attachment to it. When we place too much importance on material possessions, we lose sight of what truly matters. We become disconnected from our inner selves, from our relationships, and from the simple joys of life. But when we practice contentment, non-attachment, and faithfulness, we discover a wealth that is far greater than anything money can buy. It is a wealth that brings lasting happiness, peace, and fulfillment. Conclusion: finding inner peace through timeless wisdom. As we reflect on the lessons presented in these teachings, it becomes clear that the path to true happiness and fulfillment lies not in the accumulation of external wealth or success, but in the cultivation of inner peace, contentment, humility, and faithfulness. By embracing the principles of deep listening, authenticity, acceptance, resilience, simplicity, humility, and non-attachment, we open ourselves to a life that is rich in meaning, purpose, and joy. These teachings, drawn from the timeless wisdom of Buddhism, offer us practical tools for navigating the complexities of modern life. They remind us that the pursuit of wealth, status, or validation from others will never bring lasting happiness. Instead, true wealth is found within, through our relationships, our health, our sense of contentment, and our connection to the present moment. As we move forward on our individual journeys, may we carry these lessons with us, using them to guide our actions, our thoughts, and our relationships. Let us practice humility, listen deeply, embrace failure as a teacher, and find peace in simplicity. In doing so, we will discover the true wealth that comes from living a life of integrity, compassion, and inner peace.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to see the next episodes.